welcome to another 1570 project. I'm really excited because today Matt Carano came on with me. He took some time away from Gerry to come be here with me today and talk about the whole Brandi Love situation, because this was getting a lot of attention on our Twitter, where Tom and I were arguing about this. And I know, Matt, you and Gerry talked about it on the Callan podcast also, about this whole situation. So if you don't listen to those other podcasts, just to kind of get you up to speed, Brandi Love is would you call her a MAGA porn star?
I would say that. Yeah, she's a conservative porn star. Yeah.
And that's her branding, how she's branded her content. And she showed up at this TPUSA event, the Student Action Summit that they have in Tampa, and was tweeting about it and everything, and they booted her from the event. They kicked her out. So
they sent her an email. It was an email boot.
Right. They refunded her money for her VIP ticket that she bought, or two, I guess, for her and her husband.
$1,400, yeah. Yep.
But they refunded her, but I don't think they refunded her for her hotel room and other things. So
plane flight, yeah.
So she probably was out some money there. Although I think she's probably made it back in promotion at this point from it, because this got way more attention than it probably ever would have. I didn't honestly even know that TPUSA was having a student action summit, frankly. Hadn't heard of it, had never heard of Brandi Love personally myself. So it was all new that this was the first I heard of any of these people. So I think that she's certainly gotten a lot more eyes on her content. And I think they probably got more attention for their event too than they would have had otherwise. So,
but very negative attention. I mean, she has 800 and some odd thousand Twitter followers right now. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how many TPUSA is, but it probably rivals that. And I think it's a lot of they've probably gotten the wrong attention. I think she's come out on top of this one.
I mean, I don't know about that, because to someone like me, and I go to some conservative conferences here and there, not student ones anymore anyway, but for someone like me, I like that they booted her, because for me, that's, more in line with my values and what I would want to see from a group that's calling itself conservative. I would, want them to say, not necessarily that we have to make porn illegal or something, but they didn't, make some statement about the way she makes a living in general, or try and get her kicked off the internet, or, put in a complaint with OnlyFans or whatever that she needs to be kicked off of her platform to make money. They didn't try and, ruin her livelihood. They just said, this conference isn't for you. See ya, right?
Well, maybe we should start with the things that the thing that you and I probably both really agree on, which is private organization, they get to do what they want. So I have no qualms with the legality of what they did, the moral implications of what they did. It's not that. I just don't think it put them in a good light. And I think the Republican Party and conservatives in general took a shot on this one. They're definitely this is a problem. Mm-hmm. Conservatives have a problem. You can't. I don't know. I honestly do not know what conservative values means at all. I don't know what the fundamental I know what I'm a libertarian. I know what my fundamental core value is: the non-aggression principle. It's you can't hurt people. You can't take their stuff. Any use of force that isn't defensive force is absolutely wrong morally, and you can't defend it. Only defensive force is what you can defend, which is why I believe that taxation is theft, and which is why I also believe that you own your own body and get to do with it as you please. And if someone else gets to tell you what to do with your body, you do not own your body anymore, and you're a slave. So in this case, what is the conservative value that is being upheld by kicking her out?
So to me, my biggest issue with this is that, well, first of all, I think she's being a little disingenuous here. I don't think that she was purely just attending to listen to speeches. She went as Brandi Love, which is her stage name. She didn't go as, I forgot, Tracy, whatever.
Yeah, but that's what she is in public always. Always she's in public like that. That's
okay, but that's, piece of evidence one. She's tweeting at the conference handle. She's saying, check out my feed to her Twitter feed, which is,
I haven't seen that.
It's explicit. Yeah, she was tweeting at the conference handle at TPUSA when she was at the conference saying, I'm here right alongside tweets that,
oh yeah,
really
she took
totally explicit.
In a very conservative outfit.
Right.
I mean, it was a shorter skirt, but it was a dress, and she was taking pictures. She was excited to be there. You could tell she was taking pictures in front of
but
like
I mean,
pass and all that stuff.
It's a student event. And
college. That's disingenuous too. You can't say that they're kids.
They had specially priced tickets for under 17-year-old kids, and they were sold out of them. So it's an event that's geared toward high school and college students. There were quite a few underage kids there as well. But
she bought
more
the adult
to the point,
version.
Right, that's fine. That's fine. But she's 48 years old, so she's not exactly like in the target demo for the thing.
Well, that's not
for the event, but the people who are there are in the target demo for what she's selling, correct?
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
I mean, she's going as promotion.
But you can make that argument of anybody. You could say
course.
oh, I'm someone. I'm a insurance salesperson, and if I go to this other event that I really like, I'm still that, and I'm still representing the values of the company that I work for. I mean, you could make that argument.
If you and Gerry went together to the TPUSA Student Action Summit in Tampa, if you and Gerry were there together. Even if you didn't have a table, even if you were just hanging out in the VIP lounge and wanted to hear Ron DeSantis talk, right? Like, which is probably true. I assume she did want to hear Ron DeSantis talk, but I would assume that you were going there as a part of promoting the show, correct?
Well, you're assuming that, but that's not what's happening. I mean, she has so much money from her doing her porn. Like she really does. Her OnlyFans. She's got so many Twitter followers.
She did a lot of tweeting of links to sign up for her various
but she wasn't tagging TPUSA. See, the way that you made it sound is like she was doing a shower scene and tagging TPUSA, which is not what was happening at all. I mean, she was doing her normal, like she normally does.
Well, she did do one at the conference as well. But
not as a sexual one. She did it as a picture of her in her conservative dress, like in front of people that she really liked.
She had a tweet where she said, like, join my shower live stream, and she said it's in the paid OnlyFans so that we don't piss off the whatever she called them, like the Christian Taliban or whatever.
But I think that happened afterwards. Are you sure that happened before she got kicked out?
That one was after. Yeah,
okay,
that one was after.
That's what I'm saying. That's just
but my point is that she's selling a product at the event.
That happened after she was kicked out, though. That's disingenuous, too. You can't say she didn't do that before that. I thought that because I went back.
Shower scene,
I knew that you and I were going to talk about this. I knew you and I. So I went back into her Twitter feed, and maybe I'm wrong and maybe I missed it. But what I saw was that the only stuff that she was tweeting at TPUSA was the stuff that she was so excited to be there. She's like taking a picture in front of posters.
Right, but it's from her porn selling account where the pinned tweet.
Public persona.
Okay, but the tweet that's pinned on that page on that Twitter is it was at the time when this happened, it was an explicit photo of her naked, where she's showing everything, and with links to sign up for her cam sites, which that's fine.
Wait, you're saying that's her pinned
that was her pinned tweet at the time she was tweeting at TPUSA. Well, but my point is, like, if you're TPUSA and this person's tweeting at you that they're there and that's their pinned tweet is that they're selling porn, like, I mean, I think they feel that they have a liability to protect kids that are at this conference.
There's no liability.
I mean, I think they feel they have a responsibility to protect kids who are attending the conference, a responsibility to parents who are sending their kids to the conference, a responsibility for their image, that's not what they want to be associated with. Just like if you're, a cigarette company and you're tweeting from the cigarette company's account, about that you're at the conference, that's also, I think they probably would have booted them too. Anyone else who's doing that. And it's tough because, and this is like the economy we live in now, right? Is that people are monetizing themselves as a person, right? So like the product that she sells is her. So it's virtually impossible to distinguish what she's selling from her just showing up at an event, right?
So if so Gene Simmons is a conservative guy. He goes to TPUSA. Does he get kicked out? His name, I mean, he would go as Gene Simmons. His name is Chaim Witz, but would he get kicked out? I mean, he's done explicit music. He's got that big tongue thing. Does he get kicked out?
I mean,
I'm just saying, like, the point is there are all sorts of people who have their stage names who go places as their stage name. You can't kill them.
Yeah, but what are they selling though?
Well, I mean, it does. Well, that's the thing. It's like, does it? She was. That is her. That
does he sell anything that's illegal to sell to kids?
Then you have a problem. What's illegal to sell to kids?
Her porn is illegal to sell to kids.
Oh yeah. But she's not doing that. She wasn't targeting kids.
Well, but she's selling porn.
Not at the
from the account with which she's tweeting at the conference.
She was. I mean, I think that's a huge stretch.
I think if she hadn't tagged them, in the tweets, I don't think there would have been an issue.
Oh, it was so that part was so wholesome. First, she is not wholesome at all, but that part was super wholesome. She was so excited. You should have looked at her face.
I mean,
it was so wholesome. This is what it was. She was excited to be around young people who are excited about conservatism.
I hate to be a little bit cynical, but I think you're looking at this a little naively. I think she's excited to be around young conservatives because she sells a product that is for young conservatives, which is conservative porn, which the target market is young conservative men, correct?
But she doesn't have to leave her house for that. She does not. She has such a huge. I don't know how many people were at the TPUSA. Wait, hold on a second. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many people were at the conference. Mm-hmm. Because I couldn't find that. Maybe it was a couple. Let's say it's even 2,000 people. She has multiple times that in OnlyFans. She doesn't need to go to that conference in order to sell stuff. She has such a huge platform and profile. She doesn't need to do that.
Well, she doesn't need to, but people do still promote their brands who are really famous and still go to events and tweet about being at the events in order to, grow their online presence. I mean, like I said, I would assume if Gerry was at the TPUSA conference, I would assume it was because he's trying to grow his audience and his brand.
No, maybe
that would be weird anyway if he wanted to go hang out at the conservative college students. I mean, that's probably the best motivation I could think of for him to go to the college student event, right?
But you also have a ton of older people who are speaking at that event too. Didn't Trump speak?
I don't know if Trump did. I know DeSantis did, but
I mean, it's not just kids there.
It's not just kids, but it's the target audience of the event is students.
Once again, I'm not arguing whether or not they could. I think the conservative.
I don't know what the average age is there, but I mean, like I say, I didn't see a lot of other middle-aged people there.
How do you know? Wait, you went?
No, I mean, I'm saying I haven't heard other people talking about being there other than people who are invited speakers. And, I mean, I haven't, it's not an event that I hear about people going to. Like CPAC, I know a ton of people who go to CPAC. You know what I mean? But
I mean, at certain
maybe it's just a less famous event, but I
face value.
Well,
at a certain level, you have to take people at their face value. You have to say, I mean, I look at her actions. Like I said, she was not tweeting at the conference talking about her in sexual ways.
She was tweeting at the conference from her porn account.
Doesn't matter.
Where she sells porn.
That's just her. That is her account. Just like if you're Gene Simmons, you go to a restaurant, you're still Gene Simmons.
So, but you think the tweeting at them with the shower scene thing, because it happened after, you think, but you don't. Okay, so but the point is that the two things are linked together, right? That she knows that she can get attention by tweeting at them onto her feed.
Yeah, she did that afterwards because she was pissed. I would have done the same thing. I mean, I am me on my, everything about my world in life. I have very different interests, right? I've got blockchain interests. I've got Gerry. I've got Kirk Minahan show. I've got Quantum Week. All of that combined is me online. Now, all of her combined is her persona online. So she goes places like that.
Yeah, which is a persona that she said. I mean, I don't know how many other conferences she goes to, but for example, I don't think she would be kicked out of CPAC because that's a conference. Well, first of all, it's a much more libertarian leaning conference too. But even though it's called Conservative Political Action Conference, it has a reputation for being very libertarian-y. But I think
people don't know what that word means, really. I don't think that's libertarian, but that's fine. I don't know. Now we're just
Rand and Ron Paul always win the straw poll. That's what I'm
Rand is not libertarian.
Okay, Rand isn't, but
no.
I mean, I think that it's a more libertarian leaning event than a lot of conservative events are.
It might be, but we don't know what would happen because unless it's happened in the past, we don't know. So now we're just assuming. But but I think we're in agreement. They had the ability. I just think it was a bad move for their brand. Conservatives need to get.
Oh, I don't think so. I'm thrilled that it did.
Wait. Conservatives need to get the, like, you either believe that someone owns their body or they don't. You have to believe that or you don't. And if you don't, you're a liberal.
Okay, but to me, so like if you don't, you're a liberal. But okay, so like you're saying if they don't do that, there's no difference between the two parties to you. But to me, when I look at it, and I see, you know, one party that's like, you know, having people that's in favor of like teaching little kids about masturbation or whatever, like in the New York prep schools, they've had this big debacle over it because they have this like woke sex educator and everything. And like, that's like one party. And then the other party, like, we're just going to be fine with, somebody like selling kids porn. Like and then to me, I'm like, okay, well then like to me, there's not really much difference between the two parties and I might as well go be something else because then I don't have a political home. Like
you don't, I know, it's very sad. Well, also like public schools are evil. So I mean, I don't believe in stealing people's money in order to force education. So I wouldn't do that anyway, but so that's wrong too. Both parties are wrong in my mind, but
I mean, like, so I don't,
You have to look at the underlying principle.
So here's
what is the underlying principle?
The underlying
you
principle.
Own your body or not?
The underlying principle to me that was at issue here. She owns her body. I don't think that at any point in time TPUSA contested her right to make porn in the United States of America and sell it to people. Like, and I mean, I actually do know some conservatives who think that making porn should be illegal in the United States.
A lot of them do, yes.
But here's my thing is I think that both parties have to face this, but especially conservatives are probably the party, like the Republicans are a little more equipped here to address this issue, is that I think there is way too much easy access to porn in the United States for kids.
Like, you either believe in the internet or not. Like, you believe that parents should have responsibility.
But we do it for some things. We do it for some things. For example, we do it for child porn.
No, you say we, but not me.
Okay, so you don't think we should?
No, the principle remains. The principle remains no matter what. It's you have the right to your own body or you don't. That principle remains. And you can't hurt people and take their stuff. That principle remains. And then everything else from there for me. So my question for you is, wait, before you say that, my question for you is this. Do you like my question, don't you think if conservatives just came out and understood the fact that people own their own body, it would crush liberals, because then people would have a place to go. People who believed in limited government would have a place to go. They have no place to go now. Conservatives aren't about living limited government anymore. They have no place to go.
I think that libertarians think there are more people who agree with them than there are sometimes on certain issues.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think a lot of people agree because they don't understand the implications of what they wish. When they want government to control people, they are actually asking for guys with guns to come and take shit from you. That's the problem.
I mean, and I agree. And I often call myself a conservatarian. That's the stuff where I tend to like be more conservatarian. Like when people tell me Black Lives Matter and go like, well, Eric Garner was killed for selling loose cigarettes. Maybe we should have fewer laws like that because, the New York legislature killed him, not the police who were there. So, and I agree with that. But I think there are some things on the internet that we've decided are so important that we do make them actually illegal. And like one of those, for example, is child porn. And, to get to the libertarian principle, the non-aggression principle of, consent and owning your own body, like we don't let people put non-consensual porn on the internet.
Yeah, that's right. Because the principle is that person couldn't give consent. So then it's without consent, so that makes more sense. But when we're talking, that's not what we're talking about with Brandi Love. We're talking about a grown woman who wants to sell her own product.
She is. And she's selling, I think, the probably most ethical type of porn, which is that she's selling her own porn herself, which I mean, if I had to pick a type of porn that was ethical, it would be that. Right.
You're saying Brandi Love is your favorite porn, Alice.
I guess that's what I'm saying. But out of all the porn I have not watched, I guess.
She'll be so excited.
But the porn industry in general has a problem with keeping those types of porn that we've decided as a society should actually be illegal off the internet. And we've seen this happen like with, is it Pornhub that had the whole thing where they had to take like tens of millions of videos down and get rid of the automatic downloading option because there was porn that was legitimately not filmed consensually that kept getting uploaded to the site over and over. There's porn that was verified to be child porn where the people were not of legal age to consent that was ending up on their site over and over again, and they could not keep it off. And
yeah,
I mean,
once again, we're talking about a non-consensual act.
Right.
I mean,
right. But,
exactly right. We're on the same page with that.
I think in general, the principle that that we're having trouble keeping control of this industry enough to. But
then you're still not. Then you're not actually going down to the base principle, though, which is you own your body. Like if you're a legal adult, then you should be able to do with what you want. Two consenting adults should be able to do whatever they want together. That's just that's the principle. Because ultimately, the other option is guys with guns stopping them. So you have to allow one or the other. I'm not talking about non-consensual situations,
but
because that's obviously a problem.
Right. So, but the problem is that, clearly, I mean, some of the biggest players in this industry are having a lot of trouble just logistically keeping this stuff off of their websites.
Yeah, well, then they're at fault then. So here's the other issue is corporations shouldn't exist. What corporations do is it removes individual liability from the situation. Every individual who owns a company should have liability for what they put out. Doesn't matter if you're a drug company or a porn industry. If you fuck up, then you should be able to get sued for doing that.
Right.
That's the problem. But once again, we're getting away from the principle. The principle remains.
Sure. So, like what I want you to think about, though, is how do we reach a point where, we as a country are able to keep some of these things off the internet and not others? How are we able to keep minors from being able to access them? Like
great power comes great responsibility. Freedom denotes responsibility. Okay, it really does.
Of course. But I mean, I think we've both agreed here that, for example, like minors shouldn't be able to see porn.
Minors shouldn't be. I would, if I were a parent. So the internet exists. It's information. So the principle is this: people have the ability to consume information. A consenting adult should be able to exchange information. What I think is it's a parental responsibility to keep their kids from accessing that stuff. Otherwise, you're North Korea and you're deciding what people can access. You can't turn it off for one person,
right?
And not everybody. If you're the government, you can't. You have to take it off from everybody. So what I would want is parents to have more controls so that their kids can't access this stuff.
Right.
That's really.
But part of that for parents too is being able to, because as a parent, you're not with your kid every second of the day, right?
You decide to be a parent. It's your fault.
Yeah, but you're not with your kid every second of the day. So my point is just that parents want other people that they can trust not to show their kids porn or expose their kids to porn. Or some parents do, I guess. I think a lot of parents do. So, I think that parents who send their kids to a conservative conference have an expectation that their kids won't be exposed to porn by participating in that event, and that TPUSA felt that in order to keep the trust of parents who were expecting that it was not a kind of event where kids would be meeting porn stars who were promoting their porn while they were there, that TPUSA felt that they would be betraying those parents' trust if they didn't, make her leave the event. And yeah, you can't control what she posts on the internet, but you can control whether or not she's allowed inside your event while she's posting it. So, and totally, I think that's, 100% to me, that's like where the principle is coming from, is they're saying
there's no principle
the parents,
there.
There is a principle there. The principle is
not a principle. No, the principle is a base level below that.
No, but, the principle is the parents don't want, the parents don't want their kids seeing porn, right? Kids shouldn't see porn, right? That's the principle. Whether you agree with it or not, that's the principle.
That's not a principle though. That's a curation. That's not a principle. There's a level below that. That would be the principle. Yeah. porn is not, because the principle is on the base level of whether consensual adults can do
Okay,
things.
how about no? But the principle. So say then the principle is parents want to keep harmful things from their kid.
I mean, then no, but that's fine. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's a curation. They don't want.
I mean, what would you call that principle? I mean,
I don't call that a principle. I think the non-aggression principle is a principle. It's a base level. It's the bottom rung of everything that happens. What we're talking about is a preference, and that's totally fine. I 100% get that. You're a parent. I'm not a parent. If I were a parent, though, I would not want my kids to see certain things. I wouldn't. I mean, I would talk to them about it. But I wouldn't want them to see certain things either. So no, it's a preference, which is fine. And again, TPUSA is a private organization. They have a preference to. Again, we do not have any argument whatsoever whether they have the legal, moral, ethical right in order to do it. They do. It's them as a private organization.
Right.
My problem is it just makes conservatives look bad because they're not following a principle of limited government. They don't actually care.
I think that sometimes when you distill things down to just one principle, you oversimplify reality. Do you know what I'm saying? Is like you can't.
I don't at all. No. It's not about reality. It's about do we actually have values or not? Believe me, But the
value is that parents don't want their kids seeing.
It's not a value.
How is that not a value?
It's a preference. It's different. No, it's a preference. It's not a value. Sorry.
What's the difference between a preference and a value?
Well, preference is what you want to curate. But it's not that they can still. If you are a conservative, you can say I believe in the non-aggression principle. But I also have a preference that I don't want to, I won't watch porn myself. That's my preference.
Okay.
But the conservatives, I think, are saying they want limited government, but they don't actually believe that people have the value or have the moral ability to do things like sell their own body if they want to. I don't think they do.
I mean, I think that. Well,
I think it's hurt their brain. I think from a strategic level, this is what I think. Conservatives should embrace limited government and the idea that people own their own body and can do whatever they want with it as long as it's consensual. I just think they should embrace it because then they would then the liberals would have nothing.
But I think you would lose a lot of people who.
Because the moral is so there. You just say, listen, we don't. If I were a conservative, I'm more conservative than a conservative is. But I would say, listen, I believe I don't consume that stuff. I wouldn't want my children to do it, but I also recognize that they're their own person. They own their own body. Nobody else does. And so if conservatives just actually embraced limited government, they would destroy the liberals. The liberals are not about, they want to control everything.
Well, I mean, sure. But I think in practicality, this is where I think libertarians run into problems, right? Is you can have the non-aggression principle all day long, but I mean, like we talked about, there are types of porn that violate the non-aggression principle, and as a society, we have a lot of trouble keeping those off the internet, right? So how do you protect people from having their autonomy violated?
Well, I would rather the police go after the initial infraction of the non-aggression principle. Any violence that takes place and any non-consensual acts that take place, I would rather them do that than bust people for selling cigarettes down the street or give speeding tickets, right? More enforcement. If we're going to have cops.
So, but now there's a video. Now there's, okay.
Wait, hold on. Just let me finish the thought and I'll let you go. If we're going to have cops, if we have enforcement, then let's enforce the violent acts. So here we are again. If there are non-consensual acts that are being happened and being filmed, let's go after that. Let's not go after speeding tickets and all that stuff. So number one, if we're going to do enforcement, do it that way. Number two, there are technological options in order to limit the amount that our kids get exposed to such things. It's the same, but I know it's a lot easier than it was in the 80s, but there were, kids would go over other kids' houses. They'd have their nudie porn. We didn't want that either.
Okay, but you and I both know, because I think you're around my age, right? I was born in 87.
No. I'm much older than you. I was born in 78.
Okay. Yeah. So, but I mean, I came up in that magical generation where our parents knew less about the internet than we did growing up. And I had seen stuff, I think by the time I was 14, that would make most Gen Xers faint. Seriously. because there was so much out there. And like, I think that's really harmful. I think that's a lot of why millennials as a whole are like unable to like socially interact.
They were coddled by their parents, but that, I think that's really the issue. But what you're arguing though is every technological advancement has that exact. When cars became commonplace, there were a lot more accidents and people died by cars. Like this is just the normal thing that happens when technological advances happen, and then we adapt and get better.
Right. So, I mean, in this case, how do we get better? Like, knowing that these things are filmed, like, then we can go after the person who did the initial violent act, but now there's a video of it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well,
there's a video of it, and a bunch of people have downloaded that video. So what do you do about the people who keep putting that video up on the internet for more people to watch it? Does that violate the non-aggression principle, or does it not? Because the actual violent act didn't happen.
I think that the amount of people that are actually downloading those videos are really, because people would just stream it, right? So I have no problem with enforcement taking those down at the sources too. If Pornhub or RedTube or something has that stuff on there, I would want that down as well. I wouldn't want that on there. I wouldn't want to run into it either. I mean, most people don't. Most people are appalled. Absolutely, like makes them retch with any sort of child violence or pornography. It makes them physically ill. I don't have any kids. It makes me fucking physically ill. It really does. And most people are like that. You poll the hardest murderers, right, in jail. If any pedophile comes in, they want to kill that guy because they see that as like the worst, the lowest form of human being. The vast majority of people feel the exact same way. Yeah,
and yet somehow we have trouble actually making that.
But if it's so low, if the numbers are so low, then let's if we're going to have enforcement, if we're going to have police, let's use those police to go after violent people or people who do things to people who can't give consent. Let's use them for that and not for speeding tickets and not for busting people smoking joints.
I'm 100% on board with that. I agree. But I also think that, anybody who uploads one of those videos should probably be on the list of people we go after as well.
If you're uploading it, you're probably the one who took it. Like,
well, but not necessarily. So I don't know how closely you followed the whole like Pornhub thing. The reason why like Visa and MasterCard ended up shutting them off and why they ended up taking down like a huge chunk of the site and locking up like who could upload things and stuff is because the New York Times did this huge expose that what happens is that, people who were like rape victims would, come to them and say, this is a video of me being raped and you need to take it down because it was illegal. And, here's the court case, here's whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they would take it down. But a bunch of people who liked that video on the website had already downloaded it because they had an easy, like just an option to click to download, and they liked the video. So they would just upload it right back up and then more people would see it. And they, were having so much trouble keeping control of that they ended up locking up like only verified people could post. And it ended up a lot of sort of independent porn creators were upset that it hurt their livelihoods because
of course it did,
it made it more difficult for them now to post things and make money.
Oh, it also hurts sex workers too, because now they're really shunned. They can't upload their own stuff to a bunch of different platforms now. And unfortunately for a lot of sex workers, that's how they make their money. And now, maybe they have to do prostitution. So it hurt everybody to do that. I agree.
Right. So, but I mean, is that the only way they could keep the bulk of that stuff off their website in any kind of controlled way? Or, I mean, because they weren't doing a good job of it before they did that. So, I mean, like, what is the solution? Because I think that there are a lot of people who are in agreement that, that we have a problem with access to stuff that's really bad.
Oh yeah, but I don't think the access to information is the problem. But there are technological solutions. I don't want to bore you with them, but the blockchain technology is actually for this. It's about showing how chains of ownership happening by with a public ledger and things. I won't bore you with that. But that solves a number of things. Number one, getting paid for things that you put up. Because it shows ownership, but also tracking things like that as well. This is a.
But I mean, do you think there is any point at which you would say there's any kind of tension between the amount of liberty that people have access to and, what they ultimately end up doing with it? That there's any time when what they end up doing with it is so bad that they just can't have the liberty anymore?
Yes. If you hurt somebody or steal from them, then you are absolutely violating the non-aggression principle and you should be dealt with.
Mm-hmm. So,
don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. But on the flip side, you can't vote in a bunch of people to do that to your neighbor either. You can't vote in a bunch of people to have them go and take shit from your neighbor. That's wrong as well. If it's not good, if the individual can't do it, the mob can't do it either.
Well, right. I mean, that's true. But I mean, I think to me, so like you say, there's like the blockchain solutions and everything. So why isn't this implemented? Like, why is
new technology? It's new. It's new technology. It's coming.
But like, I mean, because Facebook has talked about how they have like a child porn problem too, and their solution is that they hire bajillions of people to go through stuff and take it down.
And that's fine too. I mean, they're a platform. They curate a lot of stuff, and so it's in their own best interest as an organization to keep their stock prices up to go and clean that shit out. So yeah, I think they that's I mean, YouTube does the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, but then you end up having like, I mean, I guess there's sort of privacy and liberty concerns also, like you said, like when Pornhub did this, it ended up like hurting a bunch of people's livelihoods, that this is how they make their money. And like, you can say like, well, it's a private platform. They can do what you want, build your own website, which I don't know. There are probably some sex workers who have the capability to do it, but I think probably a lot of them.
Well, and it's more about advertising too. If you're on Pornhub or on something like OnlyFans, well, then you have a platform where people can search and find you. If you just do your own website, then you have to what are you going to do? And Google's not going to allow you to do ads. So it's more about exposure, just like Etsy exists so that people can do their crafts. It's a platform. People go there automatically and you don't have to just spin up your own website. Same thing.
Right. So, I mean, I think for those people, like, it does hurt their livelihoods. And I mean, I think you'd say that's probably like a bad thing. So there's like a tension there between the ways that these websites are like cracking down on it and like people's ability to, do what they want with their own body and make money from it if they want to.
Yes, there is that tension.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that there has to be a balance. And I think that that's like, that this is like what TPUSA kind of went through too, is saying like, she has the freedom to do what she wants, just, but we're catering to people that don't want to see it. So, and I think that these are questions that the Republican Party has to answer and the conservative movement in general, because I think there are a lot of people like you or like Gerry or like my husband or like a lot of our listeners who yelled at me on Twitter.
But that doesn't matter. Just because it's popular or just because a lot of people in your orbit think that way doesn't mean you have to, of course. It doesn't make it right. It's the principle that makes it right. And
I know people, though, like in different types of conservative circles too, right? I also sort of have an overlap. Like you said, you have sort of all these online worlds that you exist in. And, one of my online worlds that I exist in is like the like trad Christian Twitter. And I mean, for them, they're already saying like, what good is the Republican Party? They just believe everything that the Democratic Party believed 5 years ago. And they're not wrong. Right?
No. They're skewed way left. Yeah. It's
so,
more
and on social issues, especially, like the consensus on social issues has like moved completely away. So for that group of people, like who traditionally have always been these Republican voters, right? There's been sort of a sense, and like this is the type of thing that I hear conservative Christian parents saying is like, where is our party? These stupid Republicans just, they claim they're standing their ground, and it's like, oh, well, I guess showing the kids porn is fine as long as she's wearing a MAGA hat while she's in her gangbang. I guess that's fine.
The problem,
it's great. I feel like for parents like that, you're like, well.
Yeah, but the problem is it's the Republicans and conservatives are choosing the wrong battles. Like they're not choosing it from from the actual base level. They really should defend individual liberty and small government, and they don't. They want the war on drugs. They want the wars, overseas, and they want to defend, like I said, their preferences, which are more religious conservative. And I understand that, but instead defend individual liberty and just say you also have a preference, and other people can live their life the way they want to.
Right, but I think there's this weird thing that happens where the more personal liberty oriented your society becomes, the more you have like this sort of need for people to talk about preferences and about what's good and what's bad. Sure. You know, that the more you say, like, you can do whatever you want, even if I think it's terrible, that you have a responsibility to say, but I do think it's terrible, actually, and here's why, and talk about that. And I think that what's sort of happening on the left right now is the left has, like, taken the position of, actually, you can't say that things are terrible. That's bad.
Oh, yeah, no, so, but I mean, everybody's a snowflake. I mean, that's true,
but
too.
I think both
parties have done that.
But I think that, you know, in terms of like practical politics and political energy, I don't think people necessarily do vote based on like what you would call like a core principle in that sense at the deepest level, right? Well, yes. Yeah, but people, you have to, we live in a system where we have to get people to vote for things.
Yeah, but I don't vote. I wouldn't vote because then I'm signaling my consent for the system, which I don't consent in. Right.
But, you know, somebody's going to run the system. Whether you consent
I would rather
to
the
it.
system did not exist.
Well, that's fine, but somebody's going to still run it at the end.
Well, yeah, through contract and negotiation, yes, not through an authoritative monopoly state like we have.
Yeah, but I hate to break it to you, but I think we're going to still have the authoritative monopoly state.
Probably for a bit, yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's here to stay, at least for a while, and that. You know, I think it would be good if there were a substantive difference with who's running the authoritative monopoly.
There just isn't, though. I mean, there really is no. So both parties will expand the role of government. That's just the way it has. I mean, if conservatives actually believed if conservatives actually believe in living in limited government, I would probably vote for a conservative, but it just doesn't happen. Every election, it's the same thing. Let's just expand the role of government in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean. And I think that that's true. And I think that a lot of liberty people were very excited by the Tea Party.
Yeah.
Well, but I think that especially because like Ron Paul was sort of.
Well, Ron's great. Yeah. I mean, he's a pretty
I voted for him twice, guy. But no
pretty
luck.
Pretty principled guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Ron Paul. I think that there was sort of a sense at the beginning of the Tea Party movement that. Especially, you know, like he raised all that money on the anniversary of the Boston Tea Party. And that's sort of, I mean, at least for me, that's like when I became aware of the Tea Party as a thing. But that I think a lot of people were confused about like what Tea Party people actually believed, including like a lot of Tea Party people were confused about what they actually believed. Because like I knew a lot of liberty people who, you know, really felt that the Tea Party was a liberty movement kind of thing. That it was
I think that's what they promoted, or that's what they were saying that they were.
I mean, I think the movement itself rapidly sort of got taken over by like corporatist Republican grifters that just were like essentially the Lincoln Project before there was a Lincoln Project. But I think that in terms of like what the people that were driving the energy of that movement, which was especially so focused around Obamacare, really like wanted to vote for, I think wasn't what a lot of liberty people thought that they were excited about, you know? And I think especially like when Trump happened, a lot of liberty people that I knew were like, what is going on? Why are all these Tea Party people supporting this guy who has nothing to do with being libertarian or liberty or any of that at all? And I think it was it Rand Paul who said that, like, you know, I thought these people were like with me, but it turns out or it might have been Ron Paul too. I don't remember who it was that said it, but it was like definitely a liberty person who was like, I thought these people were all about liberty, but they're just trying to go for the craziest person in the room, like whoever the wackiest, fringiest person is. And I think that what was seen as like a liberty thing was actually just an anti-establishment, like burn it all down. Parties suck kind of thing.
I can't speak expertly on that at all, but I will say that, I mean, I would never have voted for Trump, but the That's, but I did appreciate that he really unveiled the buffoonery of the entire thing. I mean, and it still carries forward with Biden in office now. It's the same thing. You get a look behind the curtain that like this. No, these are really crazy people who have a lot of authority to kill other people. And like, that's what's happening. Like they could bring home the military now if they wanted to, but instead they drone bomb and kill people. Like they have a psycho amount of power, and it's just all by crazy people. So I like the fact that, you see that with Trump. It was very clear that he was a crazy person. And once again, you're seeing it again with Biden. They're just crazy people. They're really just psychopaths killing people.
Yeah, it's funny. I turned to Tom and said the other day, I was like, I'm not sure like Trump actually drained the swamp, but he like got them to show themselves. Like, the whole like FBI stuff with all the FBI set up things around like the Michigan plot to kidnap the governor and whatever. It's like, wow, it really like
and trapping people. Right. If you've got people if you've got NSA or FBI or CIA like helping people go into a terrorist act just so you can catch them, I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy stuff.
There were that BuzzFeed article, they had at least 12 undercover agents and there's only 7 people in jail for it. Yeah, so I'm like, the plot to kidnap the governor was like more than half FBI agents, which is like wild, but
that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trump really exposed a lot of that, but I'm not sure that he like fixed any of the problems, and I don't know that you can, and maybe in that sense he like made it worse because the more people see it, the closer we get to just open civil war. I don't know, but
I mean, I think it needs to be torn down. I mean, that's going to have to happen. I hope it's not bloody, but now we all see that it really is. It's a huge behemoth with a monopoly on force and crazy people running it. And I mean, I'm glad people see it because once you just peel back a couple of layers, it's really clear what's happening up there. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's not great. And it's a little off topic from Brandi Love, but that's okay. Yeah, no, that's great. It's, I think, because I think that it does get at like, what does the conservative movement want to be? Like, what are its principles? Why does it exist? And, I don't know if at this point I'm so cynical that I just like think that everyone is an authoritarian inside, but I think a lot of people are. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I think the state authority is going to be here. And I think that I don't want the people who hate me running it. So,
yeah, I think, if people enacted laws that they know that their worst enemy will eventually have the power to wield, then we would have a much better government than we do right now. Because that's exactly what happens. You enact things that you would like, you think of all the NSA spying and all that stuff, all those things being legal. If you're one side of the argument, you don't mind that the other side of the argument gets spied on. But then as soon as that's turned on you, it's ugly. But that's not how people work. And that's why I think that nobody should have authority over you, Alice. You have authority over yourself.
I know, but But I think that there are, things that the government should do, and I think that pornography is like really, really a revealing example of like how the government sometimes needs to be involved in stuff because, and like you say that the technology is going to be there, or it has the potential to be there at some point to make it possible for everybody to freely put whatever porn they want on the internet between consenting adults and to keep the bad stuff off the internet. But, until we're able to do that, or until that like actually works, I think there has to be a role for getting some kind of control on this. And I think that there are a lot of people that feel that way, that like that it's way too easy to access porn for young people. It's way too easy for porn to end up on the internet that shouldn't be on the internet, whether that's child porn, whether it's non-consensual porn, whatever it is. And I think that, that kind of problem of needing the government to have enough control to stop the bad things that we don't want to happen, because I think everybody has some things that they want the government to do.
But we can't even have this conversation until the enforcement arm of the government stops going after peaceful people who are doing consensual things and turns all of their attention on violent people doing non-consensual things. Like while that's happening, like, okay, fine. You wanna go after child pornography and all that. I'm all for that. Go after them and use your resources. Go after them instead of doing things to hurt people doing consensual things, people consuming things with volition, with their own consent. Stop going after them and go after people who are hurting people. Until that happens, like, we can't even have this conversation. Like, think about all the resources that have gone towards people who are peaceful doing consensual things. That's why we have a problem with murderers and rapists and child pornographers, because of all the money being spent, or on wars abroad, like drone bombing people in the Middle East.
But I think there's
also all that shit.
But I think we have problems with some of those things because there are people that like actively promote them and say they're good also. I'm just saying, like, we have so much money. Like, go deal with that. Right. But I'm saying, like, I'm for the right of people to be able to make porn, but I'll sit here and tell you all day that I think porn is bad and why, and that it's harmful and that it screws people up and that it's like a blight on young people and their ability to like successfully relate to the opposite sex in ways that are good for society as a whole, right? Like, so I'll sit here and tell you all day why I think it's bad, but I recognize that the least bad option for the way to run a society is not throwing people in jail for making it. Like, that's, that's
a preference. And that's a super mature way of looking at it.
But
Absolutely.
I think that there are people in our society right now that are saying, like, porn is great and everyone should make it. And I mean, like, they have the right to say it too. No. There are people that are promoting OnlyFans as a way for young women to make money. Also on OnlyFans, you can make money if you tell other people. You can get a cut if they sign up, like, through,
but they're not saying, like, this
recommendation
is this is so awesome, this is the only way.
Oh, they do promote it. Do you ever see people who promote that they are like...
That's a little bit different.
There are people that go out there and say, this is a great way for young women to make money and it's awesome and you should totally do it. And, like, I bought my house by doing this and it's great, And so
maybe that's true for that person.
Right. So maybe it is true for that person, but I would disagree with them about how good it is. And, we have a right to disagree. It's a free society. But, I think that a lot of political conflict comes from those debates that are happening, which are legitimately really important to people and also real, even if they're not necessarily about, like, what should be legal or illegal, and I think that that's a lot of where political energy ends up too.
That's what politics is, though, is deciding what is legal, what's okay to use force against peaceful people for. That's what politics is.
Right.
Because the state doesn't have anything that it doesn't take. It doesn't make anything. It doesn't produce anything.
Well, right, and like so, but I know that you're against schools, right? But like,
not against schools at all. No, I'm not against.
Against publicly funded schools.
No, I'm against stealing people's money.
Okay,
taking their stuff.
Right, but so public schools. But so, for example, like, this is obviously not a problem that we would have in, like, the perfect libertarian utopia, but in the society we do live in, we have schools that people are forced to put a lot of money into paying for, and they teach kids things like whether or not it's a good idea for them to get into porn, right?
Oh, yeah, well, I don't want that either. Like, if I'm paying for a school, I don't want that either.
Well, right. So my point is that, like, so what ends up happening...
the government should be able to regulate itself. Like, we should be able to super regulate if we want to. We should have so much, like, look into. It should be so transparent. We should have so much control over schools because they're taking our tax dollars. Like, that's, right. I agree.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
that's
like,
different.
So I've heard some, like, because I've talked to people about, like, the critical race theory thing in schools, and, like, all the parents go into school board meetings about the critical race theory, and they're like, well, I don't think this sort of top-down approach where these Republican governors are, like, banning certain concepts in schools should be a thing. And I'm like, well, but they made me put money in the school, so now I get to be a part of deciding what we teach there. Like, that's just how that goes.
Yeah, I have no qualms. I mean, I think that, parents should decide where they get to send their kids, where the tax money goes. I think it should be super transparent. I think that parents should have ultimate say over what gets taught. All that stuff is absolutely true.
But I guess my broader point is that because the government does take so much money from us, and because they are involved in so many things so heavily, the values that they promote or don't promote matter a lot, right?
They're not promoting values. The value they're promoting is being violent and stealing things from people and hurting people. That's what they're right. What they're really
but which ones?
Peaceful people, unfortunately.
Well, but I mean, people who believe what things. Well,
it doesn't matter. I mean, if we work, we'll get taxed.
Well, but it matters to me because I don't want to be one of the ones that...
I just mean everybody. I mean, the authoritative state hurts everybody. By stealing your tax money...
But I think that we also have an interest because they've already stolen our tax money.
Agreed. Yeah, totally. Yeah,
I think that we have an interest in saying, what values are we promoting now,
Well, in schools, of course. We have no disagreement there.
Right. So I guess that's also part of politics then is deciding what we're going to do with this now that we're here. Right. The government has all this money and they do certain things and they go after certain people. And I don't want it to be me that they go after if they're going after people. Right. So or, if they have all my money and they're going to teach my kids something, then I want to be able to decide what that is. Or if they have all my money and they're going to, fund abortions, say, or whatever, that's another thing.
No one gets to decide. Yeah, absolutely.
So then I think what ends up happening is because we're already at the point where we do have a government that's taken everybody's money, what our politics ends up focusing on is not whether or not they should have taken the money in the first place, but now what are we going to do with it? And that's why our politics ends up focused on do we like abortion or not? Or should we make more porn or not? Or
that's why politics is poison. That's why politics is poisonous because you have these two monolithic organizations with a shit ton of money, right? Democrat and Republican. There's no third party that will ever break that because they really have a monopoly over that. And both of them are incentivized to make sure that only the two of them survive. But you have those two, and what they're doing is they're having us fight above the principle on things that matter to us from a preference standpoint, but actually don't make our lives a shit ton better because we're not attacking the underlying principle of whether or not they should be allowed to hurt us and take our stuff. We should be arguing on those principles, not on the ones way, 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 way above. But that's what we're busy arguing on. So the state gets more and more powerful. Got to focus down, Alice, all the way to the base.
Yeah, but I still think that there should be able to be conferences that do focus on the type of values that I want to promote too.
Totally.
So if TPUSA wants to be a conference like that where they're promoting that type of value, I don't think necessarily that's a losing strategy, that they're going after one group of people and saying these are the values we promote, and it might be not the right strategy from the standpoint of limiting government more, but I think that in terms of a political strategy, in terms of letting people know where they stand on these issues, that it's a winning strategy with certain types of voters.
Conservatives, what they really need to do to differentiate themselves is be the party of individual liberty.
I don't know that that's a politically winning strategy, except with libertarians, that there aren't that many.
No, people want because then you have because what's going to happen is people will have their own if you're a feminist, right? You have to believe my body, my choice. You really do. And so there's going to be conflict in their mind about it. Oh my God. The conservatives are the only ones who are actually believe my body, my choice. I'm a conservative. That's what would happen. But they won't do it. They're too wussy. They want to go. They ride the coattails of the liberals, and they're too afraid. And TPUSA, everybody that goes there, that it's a hypocritical organization. You're telling me less than 50% of the people who go to that watch porn? Come on.
No, I mean, I don't think so necessarily, but I think there are a lot of people. I think there are a lot of people that think we should have less pornification of our society in general.
Pornification is a good word.
And I think that there are a lot of people that want to see less of like the promotion of that type of culture too.
That's fine. Then just don't go to the sites that promote it. It's very easy, Alice.
Well, yeah, but
Opt in.
TPUSA is like one place. So if they want to, they made a decision that they want to attract the kind of people that don't want that, right? Like, so I don't know that strategy, I mean, I guess we'll see. But I think that for people that do think that porn is a really bad influence on our society, I think that obviously sends a signal to them that, like, we're on your team. This is what we are excited about promoting, and it doesn't include Brandi Love.
Yep. And once again, you totally have my support, and they have my support as a private organization to be able to make that decision. I think it's a losing strategy because they're just fighting above the principle, and that's exactly what the liberals do. They're never going to differentiate themselves.
I don't know. So maybe I'm like, maybe like the circles I run in are just weird politically, but when I talk to like younger conservatives, especially, obviously like the really extreme example that I definitely like don't agree with is Nick Fuentes. But, you know, I think that what's like edgy and cool with a lot of really young conservatives is this sort of almost like more socially traditional value. I mean, they go around like calling people degenerates. What was the Nick Fuentes thing about? They went around. So he's a YouTuber who's, among other things, he's a Holocaust denier, which is not.
That's your example.
That's like problematic. But like the reason that he kind of popped into being as famous as he is because he and his fanboys would show up at events, in particular TPUSA events, in particular, pro-Trump events, including like they heckled Don Jr. And Kimberly Guilfoyle, saying, about gay issues in particular. Like, why is promoting anal sex so important to you? Why is this such an important issue to you? Is that the value of the Republican Party? Like going and heckling them, the Republican Party, for being too soft on social issues. And I think that there are
that's not a social issue at all. That's a morality of consensual people get to do what they want. I mean, it's a base level thing. It's either you own your body or you don't.
Well, but I mean, in terms of social issues in the common parlance,
not a social issue; it's a moral issue. But it's two people get to love each other or they don't. I mean, if they're can adults do consensual things together or not? That's it. It's really it's super simple. It is. Otherwise, you are saying, guys, you want any enforcement, any law, any enforcement, whatever, is saying you want somebody to use force to stop that from happening. So you have to ask yourself, what things are you okay with killing people over? That you're okay with hurting people over?
I think at this point, there are a lot of liberals who think that we should be okay to use force if people don't want to wear a gay flag.
Yeah, that's wrong too. So, I mean, all these people are idiots. Two wrongs don't make a right. These are idiot people.
Well, sure, but I think that what's happening is that the left has pushed in such an authoritarian direction on these issues in particular.
So it's the right, not just on the social issues, but like the war on terror. Think about that. I mean, think of the lives cost. Think of the war on drugs.
A lot of people that are Democrats were for the war on terror too.
Oh, I agree. No, I know. But how it propagated was definitely, George Bush, the two, right? That's where it really started. It's just, it's because the party is the same. Like they're having both parties are the same. It's one monolith. It really is.
Right. But I think where a lot of the energy of young people in the Republican Party right now, where that energy is with people who are saying explicitly now, and I want to be clear, I don't think this is a good thing, but I think that it's a real phenomenon that there are a lot of young people in the Republican Party now who are saying explicitly, like, authoritarianism is pretty good and we wanted to enforce things we like, and I think that the reason that's picking up so many adherents right now is because the left has so successfully been pushing from their authoritarian side for long enough now that the people that they're using that force against really feel a need to push back, and that they're feeling that their ability to push back is only coming from people who are explicitly endorsing authoritarianism from the right.
And I mean, so right authoritarianism people would call fascism, and left would call communism, but they're the same thing. They are ultimately the same thing. You have a strong central government, a small group of people who have power, who have lethal power over everybody else. But both sides are wrong.
I think that's fine. They can be wrong, but from a purely practical standpoint of like not wanting a society run by either of those groups of people, I think that they're
both violent.
But in order politically to suck the energy out of movements like that, people have to feel like they have some sort of, protection from the other side's authoritarianism. Do you know what I mean?
Authoritarian, it's the same. It doesn't matter. It's violence against peaceful people.
Okay, but there's the left authoritarians and the right authoritarians. And if you're just a regular average Joe who's going about your day, doing your thing, going to work at your garage that you work at or whatever, you're just trying to live your life and you're not keeping track of whether things are authoritarian or the non-aggression principle or any of it. And
that's why we got to educate us.
All you know is that, your buddy got fired because he used the wrong pronouns for somebody and that now he can't make a living. Or, there's kids in Connecticut that the police are investigating them because they posted a stupid video online while they were absolutely plastered, in which they use the N-word and make jokes about George Floyd. Right? So, and the police are investigating for what? I'm not totally sure.
No, because I would think that, but that's the problem with the Constitution is it actually doesn't protect anything. But if you did, then you would say that's a First Amendment issue.
Right? So, but if you're just a regular person, you're starting to say...
I am a regular person.
Well...
What are you insinuating, Alice?
I'm saying you might know a little bit more about libertarianism and the non-aggression principle than the average American voter, right?
Yes.
If you're just... somebody who the police are investigating you because you use the N-word, right? Like, who's standing, and you're saying, who's standing up for me? Who's against?
Well, the ACLU should stand up for me.
Yeah, but they're not. But they're not, because they're a partisan organization.
But who would? I guess you're right.
So, but they're saying, who's standing up for me right now? And if there's another group of authoritarians that says, we're authoritarian too, and we're on your side, we don't like George Floyd either. But if you're that person and a bunch of people say, yeah, we're standing up for you, we're not going to let this happen to you in our version of society, right? You can
it doesn't
use
matter.
the N-word. You can use the N-word and say things about George Floyd all you want. Right,
Alice,
that's fine.
Stay with me.
That's fine.
Say authoritarianism is wrong.
Authoritarianism is wrong, but...
Hug.
Except God, except God's authority. The only person who should be allowed to be an authoritarian is God. Jesus is the only king.
Okay.
But so for that regular voter, right, who's not following the whole like theoretical argument about authoritarianism versus libertarianism, they're seeing this side wants to throw me in jail for saying the N-word, and this side says they don't want to throw me in jail for saying the N-word. And that's why the right authoritarianism is picking up steam right now and is gaining energy because people are being persecuted by left authoritarianism, and the only people who are standing up for them are right authoritarians.
So your option is to stand against authoritarianism. That's the option.
We may not have that option forever, though. I'm just thinking
I
aloud here, spitballing.
I actually have a ton of hope for human future. I'm very optimistic about human future because the problem with the awesome problem with the state is they are so slow and dumb, and there's so many people involved that there are ways to circumvent them, and technology will exist to circumvent them in such ways that it'll be way more profitable. Everybody will benefit way more from just circumventing the state. That's what will ultimately happen. I mean, it might get ugly before that, but that's what will ultimately happen. To me, I'm an optimist. But no, you got to just say no to authoritarianism. Both sides are wrong. It's just wrong.
It can be wrong, but when you're dealing with a system in which, people vote for people to represent them, and I know you don't, but
yeah,
a
I
lot,
would vote for,
but a lot of people do vote.
Yeah.
And, I think that obviously the left hyperventilated and cried wolf for 4 years about how Trump was this big authoritarian fascist, which
Well, he was, but they all are. They all are.
Okay, I don't think he was more than the standard, but
probably not.
But I think that if the left continues down the path they're going down, and if there's not a serious reduction in the size and scope of government and their ability to ruin people's lives, which I don't know how you really do make government smaller, but just practically speaking.
You got to choke the taxes away. Once the taxes go, if the taxes you limit the amount of taxes, it starves the government. I mean, ultimately the dollar will collapse. We're going to have digital money outside of the Federal Reserve, and that will choke the government enough. It's going to lose. It will have to lose power because it won't be able to pay for itself.
Right, but I mean, it could. The ways things can collapse sometimes aren't great either.
Oh, I know the USSR collapsed. I mean, that's why the USSR lost. That's why communism lost. That's why communism is so terrible, is because it couldn't keep up. It couldn't keep up economically. So everything was rotting from the inside of the USSR,
so, I mean,
and they basically went bankrupt.
So I hope just total economic collapse isn't our only way out of authoritarianism.
I know, I don't like it either. I think a lot of people will suffer, but I mean, but you reap what you sow. I mean, if you want authoritarian of any sort to rule, that's what's going to happen. I mean, look at Cuba.
Right, but I think
what's going to happen.
I think we could end up there though. I don't think Trump really was a right authoritarian any more than your average U.S. president is an authoritarian. But I think that we could end up with an actual right authoritarian, because I think that there are a lot of people that feel very persecuted by left authoritarians and don't feel like the Republican Party does anything to protect them from that, and you can say that the strategy for the Republican Party ought to be just more liberty.
Limited government. Yeah, should be. That's the only way they can differentiate themselves. Otherwise, they are liberals. Ultimately, if you look at the platform of the Republican and the Democratic Party, it's about 90% the same. It really is. If you look at the scope of what they affect, right?
Yeah, and I think
war on terror, war on drugs. It's that the budget, all that stuff is so much. They're so much on board with each other. It's a really tiny amount that they argue over. So no, the Republican Party needs to differentiate. If they went liberty, things would make a huge. They would start to win elections again. I mean, they just can't they can't keep up. But
I think that what happens is, I think in some ways authoritarian in a lot of ways is always stronger politically, just because I don't know, maybe people are just tribal and they want their team to win, what they perceive to be their cultural team,
Yeah, right.
So I think that it's always appealing to people ultimately to be on a side of something, and maybe that's the
side of liberty.
But I just don't know that side is politically viable.
Oh, it is, because ultimately this is what happens. Eventually,
what are the examples of it?
I don't know if you've ever looked into game theory at all, but in game theory there are two opposing parties, right? This is game theory.
I'm an economics major, so yeah.
Okay. Right. Ultimately, you need to be able, for a system to stay intact, defending the system has to be cheaper in cost, in time, in effort, and whatever, than upheaving the system. Eventually, the cost of keeping the government the way it is, as it grows and grows and grows, is going to be so expensive. It's the way to circumvent it is going to be a lot cheaper. That's how it's going to go. It really is.
I mean,
can't defend it. It's it's too big. It's going to get too big. The U.S. government is the biggest government ever.
I don't know that electorally liberty is going to win.
It doesn't matter. I mean, that you choke the dollar and it's gone.
Well, yeah. So, but then we're not really talking about political solutions really anymore anyway. In the sense of
moral solutions. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I guess we're in agreement then, because I don't know. I think that authoritarian societies always end up collapsing, and then you end up with a much smaller government in many cases.
I mean, you ultimately have to decide whether you're okay with hurting peaceful people or not. And once if you decide that you're not into that, that's not okay, then any authoritarianism whatsoever is not acceptable.
I mean, sure, but I just think that from like a winning election standpoint, I'm not sure that liberty is necessarily always the winning principle.
No, that's why I don't vote.
So TPUSA maybe isn't dumb if they're looking at popularity from that standpoint.
Oh, they're just not differentiating themselves. That's all I'm saying. It's like they're no different by doing this. So they're not
differentiating themselves to you, but to people who are, who are looking at somebody to stand up against left authoritarians.
Yeah, that doesn't stand up against left authoritarians, because left authoritarians also don't believe that your body, your choice either. They don't.
Of course
they
not.
Ultimately don't. Right. So what I'm saying is they're not actually differentiating themselves. Philosophically, it's very similar. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, but people don't vote philosophically. People vote practically on who's coming after me and ruining my life right now. And if that team's coming after me and ruining my life, and one side says, like, we should just get rid of teams, and one side says, well, I'm on the other team and I'm going to fight that team for you. Like, I think that politically is a better winning message.
Be on the team of individual liberty.
Well, you can tell me to be on that team. You can tell me to be on that team, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know if that team wins with voters, right?
Oh, I think it does, because I think it's the only way to differentiate. That's once again, we're in a situation where both parties are almost exactly the same. So you have to differentiate, or it just is. It's not going to matter.
I don't think we end up at a political solution there. We might end up at the financial collapse solution, but I don't think people vote for that intentionally. I think it just sort of happens organically.
When they vote authoritarian, that's what they get.
So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like in a way we agree, but
we totally agree on their yes, they have the ability to do it. That's fine. Totally.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that politically for them, it could be a winning strategy. I think it could be.
They're being the same as liberals. They're
being the same to you. They're being the same to you. But my point is, like, I think that there are people who, like, including lots of evangelicals, Christian conservatives, Nick Fuentes type people, right? Like these sort of like people who have decided to embrace right authoritarianism, who aren't any longer on board with, like, let's just get rid of authoritarian teams. They're saying this system isn't going anywhere and our team's going to win in the system that we have right now.
Then of course I wouldn't back any of that either. I mean, that seems horrible to me. That's a terrible way to go through life. That's an immoral, ugly,
I think that it could be a winning strategy. I think that, before Rome fell, we had a few Caesars, and, some of them were bad and some of them weren't that bad.
Most of them were bad. I don't want Nick Fuentes. If he's the guy that you're describing to me, I don't know him, but if he's that way, if he's a Holocaust denier and just a authoritarian nut job, then I don't want any part of him either.
He is a nut job. He is a nut job, and I think that he's not the guy. But I think that moments in time call the right people up, and I think that there will be a guy eventually who is the right guy, who's mainstream enough, but is, because I think a lot of, like, why people like Trump was that he, like, punched back, right?
Yeah, I think he was he's super funny, actually, because I mean, it's gross and in a lot of ways, and it's ugly in a lot of ways, but it's also super funny. And I think unveiling the buffoonery that is the executive branch of the U.S. government is pretty awesome. Yeah, I found that amusing. But definitely.
I think there will be people who punch back who, like, mean it not in a funny way too, like who will come up and will appear. And I think that if the left continues to be as authoritarian as they are, and the right continues to sort of just roll over for it, instead of either of the things we're talking about, one of which would be to embrace liberty and one of which would be to, like, hit back in an authoritarian way. I think that the people that will rise up to fill that sort of void will not be great people.
The problem is your end state, no matter which one, left or right, is the exact same. It's infringing on free speech. It is, busting people for doing consensual things. The end result is the exact same. It doesn't matter.
I know, but I think that there are a lot of people that, like, if somebody's going to, throw somebody in jail for saying the wrong thing, that they don't want it to be the thing that they think.
Yeah, I can see that. It's too bad because ultimately it's just going to lead to a bad place either way.
Well, it happens.
I think we solved everything though, Alice, don't you?
We've fixed America. So congratulations.
Congratulations, America. You've done very well tonight. You came out on the winning end.
Problem solved. And I appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. Yeah, no problem.
And you can find Matt Carano on the Gerry Callan podcast. He's the producer of that podcast, as well as on the Quantum Week podcast.
Yes, the Pop Culture Quantum Week podcast on Twitter all the time, of course. Matthew Carano, just my full name on Twitter. Find me there.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Clouds rolled in and I said, must have brought the rain from Boston. But you looked at me and I felt the sun.